Fredericka Sheppard, you are very welcome to the Lead Well podcast.
Thank you so much, Mark. It is good to be here.
You're very good for joining us as well. And what's interesting is I love when I have people on the podcast that have started a business, but they've also had this other life where they worked in-house within the aspect of what they do. So obviously you work in the area of HR.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that transition for you and what sparked that transition. So you're obviously working somewhere, I'd imagine comfortable salary, going well, but you had this itch that you wanted to scratch. You wanted to start your own business. Talk to us about that transition.
Yeah, interesting. My goodness, when I think back, I was really fortunate to get some incredible opportunities to work with remarkable business leaders and companies. So one of my I think one of my very first HR jobs was a temporary role in Microsoft. And I was concerned that it wasn't secure enough. Right? So there you go. You definitely don't know everything when you're just a graduate. But yeah, I got to work with a US company who was setting up here in Ireland, was employee number 20-something, and got to see. And actually, that was a big influence in setting up the company later on. I got to work with really impressive people who had come back from around the globe to help set this company up. So that core management team were really, really impressive. And we got to build a business with the funding from the US, all right, which of course is great that we had. And they let us build it. You know, obviously they had support globally that we could tap in on, but they very much let us grow it here.
Gave you that autonomy.
Absolutely. And so I got to work with all of the different departments and then got to work with them on a global perspective, interfacing and different things. So that I learned a huge amount. So it kind of took all the theory and helped see it in application, and then the navigating of relationships and the importance of building working relationships. And after my time there, I went on to work in a financial services company. So again, very, very different.
Yeah.
And it was my first HR job. And it had been the first HR person to join the company after 15 years. Okay.
I'm trying to think, how did the financial
how did
services company
how did they survive?
Yeah.
So a daunting task, but I was eager for it. I was hungry for it. And I went in to manage the Dublin office. And I'd say within 6 to 9 months, I had Singapore reporting the US and the UK. So it became a global HR role. But you know, I was really ambitious in lots of ways. I loved what I was doing, and I really felt I brought a lot of my learnings from my time with the US company, even though this was an Irish company with a different style of leadership, different cultural dynamics. Now I had experience of working with Asia because we had a manufacturing site in Korea. And so that I think probably helped de-risk it a little bit for me, that I had some idea of the differences. And obviously we had a parent company in the States. So, so that was great. And I really, really enjoyed that. And then I took an opportunity to go into tech and software. So I think at the back of my mind, I wanted to explore industries and sectors. I didn't want just one dimension.
And was that something, can I ask, that you had a strategy of, as I move through my career, I don't want to, for example, be pigeonholed to one sector, or did it happen more organically as you were moving through your career?
I would love to say it was a strategy of my career, but it was a bit more organic. I just knew it I had that sense that I wanted to explore more.
Yeah.
You know, and actually that was wonderful then when you go into HR consultancy and you want to work with different sectors. So it brings that credibility because you've seen all sorts of different environments. And across those 3 areas that I'd worked in, the 3 of them alone were significantly different, you know. And then before I set up Voltedge, I had worked again with a US company, a global organization, and I had taken on an EMEA role there. So 15 countries, all with very different employment law, entitlements, you know, again, challenging, but great to stretch me and great to get that exposure and opportunity. So, you know, I have been really fortunate that all of those opportunities came my way, you know.
So you've essentially had this, you know, quite a stellar career in HR, working in all these different industries, these different sectors. But what was it for you that made you think, rather than staying within a role in-house with one of these large MNCs, actually what I want to do is I want to create my own business?
So, you know, one of the really important things that I was mindful of all the way through those organizations, because I had seen we built great teams and we downsized. We built great teams and we downsized. So that was part and package of pretty much all of the organizations at different stages, into different degrees. So, and they were all different sized organizations. So what was really apparent to me was no matter who's funding you, no matter who owns your business, and no matter what sector or size you are, you're actually navigating the same realities, okay? And that definitely was one of the compelling reasons to set up a consultancy, to bring all of that capability to businesses who either couldn't afford to have a HR person or weren't at the size that they warranted a HR person, but they still all needed that expertise. And very often, they didn't go out to get that, you know. So they didn't necessarily have it in-house, but you would go out to an expert to get your branding or your marketing done. You would go out to get your accounts and your audit, year-end audit done. And yet, for a lot of businesses, they didn't necessarily realize, actually, I can do this. All right. They might go to their lawyer, but, you know, that could be a business lawyer.
Can I get in trouble for this?
Yeah, you know, but they're not always briefed on employment law.
Yeah.
You know, and we know the relationship with employees is just more than compliance. You know, so there's a whole other layer that you want to bring that relationship between employer and employee to. And that, I think, was part of what we really wanted to do.
You knew there was a need, and I like how you said we there, because your business, you had a co-founder within your business, which I think is really interesting to discuss as well, that dynamic. How did that, you know, having that other person there to help create this with you, how much of a help was that? How much at times maybe was there friction in that relationship? Curious how that developed maybe from the start right up until as we were chatting about yesterday, obviously Joyce has recently retired. So I'd be curious to ask you as well about how you're finding life now as I suppose the remaining founder.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it definitely was a big benefit, without a doubt. I mean, Joyce and I met early on in our career. Both of us worked for multinational organizations, and we were actually part of the IBEC Tech Forum or something like that for HR professionals. And so we found ourselves, so we didn't come from a friendship as such. We came from a professional relationship, which again, I think was important. Because you know what they say about, you know, setting up a business with friends or family. So we came to this opportunity of setting up a business together from a professional perspective. And our paths just kept crossing, you know, and then we would arrange to meet for lunch and we would brief each other on where we were, what we were working on or whatever. And I had started doing some consulting work before Joyce had, she was in full-time employment. And I had said to her, you know, gosh, you know, we really should think about doing something together. As much as a casual remark as, you know, is there something in it? Anyway, it did take us about 2 years to get our act together. I had two little people in my life, two little girls at the time of starting Voltedge. So during that 2-year time when we were, you know, discussing it and planning it and all the rest, I had gone to have my second daughter. And it might have taken a little bit longer as a result of that, but we finally set up in 2011. I think it's a fantastic opportunity to have a business partner. Like some people have silent business partner. Joyce we were not silent business partners. We were very active. Very different in lots of ways, but I think what we had, our core principles were the same. We were really clear about how we viewed HR and the role that HR plays within a business to enable it to be successful. And like we set up during the banking crisis, all right? So when I had my second daughter, that was 2009. So yeah, it was in that time of crazy financial crisis.
And was there not a thought in your head? I'm sure there was many.
Am I crazy to do this? Well, there was indeed a thought. But you know what? I honestly believe crisis brings opportunities, and it depends on how you look at the problem. All right. And so it was even more compelling in my mind that we should do this. And it is still core to our business principles. So at the time when we set up 2011, much of our initial consultancy projects were restructuring. And you think, so why would a company who is challenged financially reach out to spend more money getting a consultant to come in and help them? And that's what we had to, that was our proposition. That's what we had to sell. And so even today, it is really, really core to us. What is the added value we're bringing to this relationship? Whatever it is the client is doing, whatever is happening, what is the added value and why would they pay for us? So that kind of, I think, really brings you back to your basic principles and core. What is it we do and why are we doing this? So that's been really, really important, I think, throughout our growth and just to stay true to that.
We spoke a little bit about that before we started recording, but just how that is a constant as well.
Yeah.
You can't decide on, as you've described, you can't decide on that purpose day one and then go back to it 5 years later.
Yeah.
You got to revisit it time and time again.
Yeah.
You described a really nice process of going on a journey with the client. So understanding essentially when that client has to adapt or it's faced with a challenge, that you're there and you're able to understand and then be able to help serve that client appropriately at that time.
Yeah.
And that's where the purpose needs to evolve, not just the service offering, but actually evolving that purpose to be able to align with, okay, well, where is the client now?
Yeah.
What help does the client need now?
Yeah.
And you describe that as something that is ever present, that journey, building that relationship.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's that level of maturity in us came as well with the opportunity we got to develop really meaningful relationships with clients. So we still work with companies that we started working with back in 2011. So I think building that trust, credibility, and advisory piece is really important. And I don't know that we set out to build that in that term. Now that I'm able to say that to you now, but were we wise enough to know that that's what we were doing? Not really. We were just clear in our own minds about how we wanted this to be, how we wanted the relationship to be with a company. So that partnership, let us enable you to build a great team. Let us help you to create an environment where all of your staff will flourish. So that's really what we try and do.
Yeah.
And so when you think about that type of offering, then understanding where the client is, how their needs are evolving and growing, helping them navigate some of the uncertain times that come, and they might lose a significant project, or there may be a global crisis and we've come through all those things in the last number of years globally. What is it we can do to actually enable our client to navigate it and be successful, to come through this with staying true to their values, really bringing their culture to life, because all those terms are just that.
Yeah.
Unless you bring them into daily activity and how we engage, how we communicate with each other, like making it real so that people actually feel the difference.
Yeah. What I'm seeing as you're speaking as well is, even as you're bringing up the question of trying to understand the client, there's real focus on your face, in your mind.
Yeah.
You can see there's a real want for you to understand each and every client that you work with, which I have no doubt is a massive strength. But also what I really like is when you're talking about that, let's call it the selling process, right? You're using very emotive language. How do you want your employees to feel? How can we how can we help them flourish? In terms of that process of because again, I know that this is something I'm very keen to get your take on. How important is it for you when you're in that process of meeting a new client to not just fall back on the default of here are the services that we offer and here's the general needs that they serve, but that you're actually striving to essentially build that relationship, which is far more than just a transactional relationship?
Yeah, so how will I answer that, Mark? I think, starting out with Voltedge, if you had said to me that I needed to be a salesperson, I would have run a mile. All right. I would have thought, I don't know how to sell. I am no good at it. And I just want to do HR. All right. I want to build a business where we can do HR.
You want to be the technical expert.
But what I have learned is actually every day we're probably selling, because it's a relationship sell. All right. And it's not that we're selling to increase our own revenue, but actually what you're doing as part of that process with the relationship is you're understanding what the client might need. And one of the things that's really, really important to me is that we're delivering what the client needs. So if we have a client that signs up for retained services and they're not using them, but they just want them to have them in their back pocket to call on us when they need, we will continue to engage with them and offer them a training course, offer them some sort of services. I want them to get value for the money they're spending with us. So that's really important. So it's not just about, get the person to sign and we're good. It's enable the relationship to grow, develop, and bring real meaning and difference to the client. So I think that's one of the things that I think is really important about Voltedge is, yes, we provide HR consultancy services and advisory, but actually we do an awful lot more than that. We're more than just keeping you compliant. We will support you, we will handhold you, we will help you develop your skills and capability and deliver it your way. That's really important. You need to be the leader of your business. We want to come and help you to be great at that.
Yes. And in a service-based business like what mine is and what yours is, that piece is critically important that you're describing. Because if you do one piece of work with a client, but that client has a really good experience, we all know that there's a great chance that they're going to, when that topic comes up in conversation, who are they going to mention? They're going to mention Voltedge.
Yeah.
Whereas if you think, okay, well, I've got that piece of work out of this client, but actually I could maybe upsell them certain things that they don't necessarily need.
Yeah.
You might earn a few extra bucks on that sale, but ultimately long term, will that person be speaking about you
in the same way?
In the same regard. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we don't have any salespeople on our team, and we've never hired sales. We thought about it last year. So we have grown year on year through referrals and through repeat business and through retained services. And we've continued to evolve our services, and we've continued to broaden our team and the skills on our team. And even now in the last few months, we've been looking at strategy for 25 and beyond. And, we've been sitting around talking about, so what are the new problems we see coming? Like, what are we actually hearing from our clients when they come to us? So what is that? What does that mean? If they're coming to us with these issues, what can we read into that? So we've become, I think, more intelligent in how we work, because we're now capturing data from all of our touch points with our clients to help us to stay more informed and for us to be able to do that analytics.
Yeah.
What is this indicating? So we know that obviously from a compliance point of view, we have legislation that comes through our national government, but then we have a lot that comes through Europe. And, there's health and safety and equality legislation as well as employment law. And so much then is determined by case law, what happens in the WRC or what happens in the courts. So we need to stay absolutely razor sharp on all of those things. So no excuse for us not being great at that, because that's who we are and that's what our clients expect from us, is to be absolutely experts. But what does that mean for our client? So, much of the work I guess we do is around, trying to create really great work environments, help clients find talent, help them understand what their skills and capabilities needs might be for the next 2 to 3 years. Looking at maybe their organizational structure. Are they able to scale and realize their strategy based on how they are now? What are the changes they might need? Maybe establishing the dreaded performance management process, But, these are all of the things. And so when we bring our HR expertise to the table to have those conversations, we want to help them navigate to ensure that there's good consultation and engagement with staff at the outset. If you're going to go through any form of a change cycle, first of all, that you understand that change cycle yourself. All right. And the thing is, we're going through change cycles every day, but we've become, comfortable with them. We park our car in a different place. Maybe sometimes some people don't. Some people like to park their car in exactly the same space every time. So what are those indicators? They are indicators that actually for some people, security and certainty are key. So all of us have a mixture of people within our workplaces with, different profiles, bringing lots of talent and capability. But when we introduce change, we need to understand it ourselves. And there's generally, I think we're uncomfortable with change because we've become familiar with where we are right now and going somewhere else that I can't quite visualize. And what would that mean? And what happens if it doesn't work? And all of those insecurities come to the fore, So if we don't map out a change project in a way that actually is going to enable people to actually buy into the concept of why might we do something differently? What's the compelling reason? And what's your role in it? What might this mean for you? And actually then phase it in, bringing people along through that change process and helping them realize that actually, your role might change a little, or what you do on a day-to-day basis might shift, but you still are an important and valued member of the team. We want to support you. We want to invest in you. We want you to be at your best when you come here to do work with us. And on the days where you don't feel at your best, we want to support you. So creating all of those sort of supports and I suppose facilities is really important, but very often I think businesses don't even know they're all the things that they might need.
No, because as you're speaking, what's standing out to me, obviously I understand the value in everything that you're discussing and describing. And I'm just picturing the really motivational, the inspirational founder of the company standing up, creating the vision, and then the fallacy is that everybody just follows that vision. And don't get me wrong, every company needs, especially, listen, whether it's SME or whether it's an MNC, every company needs those leaders who are able to create the vision and inspire others to follow that roadmap, let's say.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes what we underplay is the structures we then need to put in place in order for those individuals to stay on the bus long enough to follow the actual vision to obviously its conclusion. Stay motivated during that time. And it is a case that everybody within an organization is different. People are motivated. Yes, in large degrees, we can be motivated by similar things, but we all have certain preferences and we need to be mindful of those preferences. Our managers need to be good at talking with individuals to uncover what those preferences are. So it's interesting just what you described for me there. As I say, I see the value, but I think some founders listening, some smaller business owners might be thinking, I've got 101 other things that I have to do. Is it really important for me to try to create those structures? I think the consequence of not having a process around creating those structures is that you do risk losing good people. And I'll put up my hand and say, there's been times where we've been very busy in my own business and I've neglected those structures. And what's happened is I've maybe lost somebody because they essentially, they're not attached to the vision anymore. They don't buy into the purpose. And that could have been prevented if I had have been at that time more aware of it and put the structures in place. So I understand the benefit of both sides. You do have to be the visionary CEO and be able to create that roadmap. But then you also, the follow through is you create the structures to keep people aligned with that vision.
Absolutely. And Mark, I would say your honesty about what you've experienced in reality is what everybody experienced, and ourselves included. It is difficult when you're building a business for you to stay 100% on top of everything. And that's where you need to build good teams around you. Because, like one of the things I certainly realized in the last year, and, part of it was probably why we were planning for Joyce's retirement, was, the importance of time to think. As simple as that, importance of time to think. We can be so busy doing all of the time, reacting all of the time to pressure points, to gaps, to trying to, explore a particular opportunity. But sometimes, we need to just step back and actually give ourselves an opportunity to reflect and observe and actually reconnect with ourselves. So I think any business owner needs to factor that in. Because coming through from a business point of view, yes, you want to strive and you want to build a super successful business, but you want to bring yourself forward in a way that you actually get to enjoy it. And you get to experience.
It's funny how sometimes that can be forgotten.
It can be.
Can I ask, have you come across the work by Nancy Kline, The Thinking Environment? Have you come across
I haven't,
that?
No.
Just because what you're describing.
I love the idea of the thinking environment though. Yeah.
No, it's really interesting. So anybody listening in as well, I'd highly recommend checking out that work. I did a course in it a couple of years back. It's exactly what it says on the tin. So it's creating in groups as well. It's creating what they call the ideal thinking environment. But it can be very good to then bring back into your teams and help you construct meetings in a way that you're encouraging the best cognitive environment in order to get the best quality thinking as well as decisions then as well. So the thinking environment, Nancy Kline, really good
we'll
book.
Definitely check that out. And when you say that, it seems like the most natural thing. Why wouldn't we all do that? And yet we don't, because we get so distracted on all of the other pull and push factors that we're navigating every day.
Yeah.
But that taking that time to just step back a little bit and breathe, is really, I think, where do your best opportunities or ideas or inspiration come from? It is not when you're at your desk.
No.
And I often say that because we work with, different leadership groups, as I know you do, so you'll relate to this. And we often work with some of the Enterprise Ireland, New Frontiers, startup companies. And, your best ideas don't happen at the desk.
No.
Like, they really don't. So that idea of actually wanting your staff to be at their desk, productive all the time, just think about that. If you're not doing your best work while you're at your desk, there's times when you actually go out to grab a cup of coffee and decide to take a walk down by the seafront to get some fresh air, or to, whatever it is you're doing, but when you come back, maybe you come back so refreshed that actually that problem that was just niggling away yesterday, suddenly you don't see it as a problem. You see it in a different context, and before you know it, you're actually working your way through it.
Yeah. I think what's interesting in what you're describing as well is, I think every business owner, manager, leader could benefit from doing a little bit of work around the neuroscience of the brain and how the brain actually works and operates.
And our mental fitness for things.
Yeah, because just what you're describing, like if we sit in front of that or we stay at the desk, essentially what we're doing, I always like to use the analogy of, it's like one of those old school radios where you've got certain parts of your brain which obviously are thriving in terms of creativity and innovation. The more we sit and stare at the problem, the more we turn the volume down on that part of our brain, and that fear center within the brain, we start to turn the volume up because we haven't figured the problem out yet.
Yeah.
But by actually doing what you've said, we head out, we create space. It doesn't have to be, it can be in groups as well.
Absolutely.
You can actually do something like this idea of coming back to the office for a day.
Yeah.
You hear a lot about coffee badging now.
Yeah.
I badge in, I get my lunch and I go home.
Yeah.
I'm clocked in, I have my attendance, right?
Yeah.
So when we bring people into the office, we have to be thinking, what's the level of creativity and
what's
innovation?
The experience for them?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because why else are we bringing people in unless we're creating that? Because guess what? As managers and leaders, if you have a group of people who are thriving in that environment, they're going to solve most of your problems for you. They're going to take most of your stress away from you.
Yeah. Your success is going to be through your people. I mean, that is one of our strap lines. Success is through your people. And if we forget that, or if we are misaligned with that, then we don't fully realize the value that the people around us can bring, and we don't enable them to contribute.
Yeah.
But for any leader, any manager, your job is going to be more sustainable if you've got a team around you who are rowing in rhythm to actually get to the end line. I don't know whether you've seen the movie The Boys in the Boat.
Oh, right.
George Clooney. It's a true story about an Olympic rowing team. Fantastic. And I think it symbolized, when I was watching it with my daughter, it symbolized a lot for me around teamwork and how businesses can be successful. And so watching actually rowers in a boat is so beautiful. There's something so rhythmic about it, and how the oars cut the water, and it's actually really really beautiful. So they do a lot of it on the Liffey. So there's some really, like UCD and Trinity have rowing clubs, and so they're up and down the Liffey there all the time. But
as you talk about that, by the way, I always smile because I remember we decided to do a team outing a few years back, and we did that Dragons at the Docks event, which is held every year.
Yeah.
So I brought the team to do this event, and bear in mind at the time we were very much in the corporate fitness space. We hadn't branched out as much into the well-being space. So this is probably 9 years ago. So you had essentially like 6, big muscly guys in a boat.
Yeah.
Do you think that any of them could actually row in sync with one another? Like we were literally
amazing.
all muscle, but we went nowhere.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting. So you will definitely enjoy watching that movie. Yeah. And the thing was, not only are you rowing and you're rowing with rhythm, but actually the pace of everybody has to be exact. And it's, exquisite timing. And so there was one guy on the boat who was slightly out of sync, and the difference that made. And so it's I think it's it's a beautifully produced movie, and it's a true story. So
and very analogous to obviously what we experience day to day in business as well.
Absolutely. So your success really is about the people you have around you. So if you can invest in the relationship that you have with them and they have with you, if you can enable them. So this idea of, delegating, but you have to delegate with authority. So I think sometimes we don't give the other half of empowerment.
I was just going to say, actually, what I've noticed, and maybe this is quite interesting in terms of, I'm sure there's value in this. I've found with managers and leaders, one of the actual biggest blind spots is essentially creating a relationship with a team member where you're leaning too much in the other direction. So I'm here to support you. I have your back. Whatever you need, just let me know. And the manager actually loses sight of what the relationship essentially at its core is meant to be. I'm your manager. I get judged based on your performance. So yes, I'm going to support you, but don't forget that I need you to perform at a certain level. I have found one of the mistakes managers make is they lean too much on the support side. And then what happens, not with everybody, because we know there's going to be people who really see that for what it is, and that's going to make us work harder. But in a lot of cases, what you see is team members can take advantage of that. And all of a sudden, if I'm having a tough quarter, well, it's okay because he's just there or she's just there or they're just there to support me. Have you come across much of that?
Yeah. I think it is down to that idea of empowering your people, but actually not giving them the infrastructure to be successful or giving them the authority that they need to drive something forward. So I understand exactly what you're saying. I promote somebody on my team. I'm going to let them do really well. So I'm here if you need me, and don't hesitate to come back and ask for support. So what really is your relationship? So if you are, so this idea of a coaching relationship that you have with your employees, that is great in principle. But if you're going to be the coach for your employee, then they need to get their resources elsewhere.
Yes.
And you need to set them up for success. So if you actually promote somebody into a new job, you don't give them the skills or the know-how to do that. Especially if you've promoted somebody who now goes from working with colleagues and suddenly they're their line manager, and now they have to manage people that they worked with and they were at the same level as. That can be a really, really tricky progression. So if you don't support them to be successful, but I'm here if you need me. You know that idea? So they might well need a mentor, but they might need a career coach or an executive coach to actually help them to, step up into that. Can I see myself as the person who's leading this team? Can I, have I got imposter syndrome? Am I afraid that, if I ask them to do something, they'll tell me, well, you didn't ask us that last week. So that means I can't fully visualize myself in this role. So I think the idea of having that relationship with people on your team where you're there to support them, but you need to revisit it for sure. Like, what really is my role?
Because part of that support has to be clearly describing what good looks like and then holding the person accountable to that standard. That's support as well, which I think sometimes managers think it isn't necessarily. I can't come down too heavy on that type of stuff. But actually you need to, because you'll actually be, when delivered in the right way, you're actually helping that person grow massively because they've
That's
real
real
understanding.
Empowerment, actually. That is real empowerment. And I think that's where you'll get the real magic, of what's possible. And you're really enabling somebody. to stretch themselves,
Yeah.
but you've created an environment that actually supports them.
Yeah.
So they need to know how to do it. If, maybe it is a bit of mentoring that might be needed by somebody in the business, or maybe it is that they do need to have an opportunity to go and attend some sort of a training course. I know when we deliver some of our courses, the ideal model is where we have, various different modules. So rather than taking somebody away for just 2 days and hothousing them and send them back to their workplace and, think that they're going to be able to just hit the ground running and suddenly change all the things that we're doing 2 days ago,
Which is
it's
crazy
just
to think that
not
that's-
possible.
yeah.
So when you think about it, as wonderful as all those courses are to step away from what you're doing every day, we really need to be realistic about what is the potential outcome from that investment. And they're really important investments. But the programs that we really love to deliver and we see without a doubt the most success is when we break it up into modules and we really get under the bonnet and actually get into the depth of a particular aspect, whether it is around performance or leading a team or whatever it is. And then in between the modules, have one-on-one coaching.
Oh, I completely agree. Yeah. You can't have a cookie cutter approach.
Yeah.
But also the coaching element is so important to reinforce the learning that's coming out of the module.
Exactly. How do they ever get to make that transformational change?
Yes.
And that is empowering them to do it themselves. So working with a coach to enable that to happen. Like it's just remarkable, the difference that can make.
I'd even go as far as saying that if I'm approached to provide leadership development and I say I would highly recommend that we have an element of one-to-one coaching and the company says, I just don't think we have the budget for that.
Yeah.
I would actually have to say, listen, I really don't think this is going to have the impact if this element is not part of the process because this is a journey. Like I like how you described the modules and I would be the same.
Yeah.
But let's say you pick a module like one of the modules that came up for me recently was around storytelling and how do I become a better storyteller as a leader? If you're not having a coaching session after that module, helping the person really understand the relevance for their role, how they can action on it, what changes they're going to make.
Yeah.
If they're not given that time to be able to do that, we all know what happens. The content ends up in the bottom of the bag.
I know. All that opportunity is diluted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I completely agree.
That's the thing. Like I would say if sometimes if the decision is based on budget, I would propose doing half the modules, half the number of modules, but intersected with the coaching because you will actually see a different person show up in 6 months. They will be transformed. And actually even just, having that conversation with the decision maker around, what would you love to see in 6 months' time? Well, let's focus on that.
Yeah.
Let's focus on how we can make that possible, and understanding that we learn in so many different ways. So if you're allocating time for development and growth in, with the resources on your team, I think you need to give them an opportunity to road test it,
Yeah.
Give them an opportunity to understand who they are on this journey, what it means. And ultimately, we want to create people who are doing work, yes, to a certain standard and following KPIs and SOPs and all of those terms. But actually, we want people to show up and contribute as themselves, not trying to be someone else, because the energy we use up trying to be someone else and not true to ourselves is just such a missed opportunity. None of us deliver to our best.
I think it's a really good point.
Yeah.
Really good point. I have two final questions for you.
Okay, yeah.
One,
I think we could probably stay here all day talking.
We could. One question is around, so I had somebody in the business with me for a long time. And it was probably the first time I had somebody in the business where I felt if we have a big sales meeting today and I can't go, he's going to be okay. He can deliver. He knows what the client needs. He knows how to represent himself and the business, etc. But not only that, when we were having tough days, and this person was with me during COVID as well, when we were having tough days, just having them there to have a conversation about all of the stuff that the fears, the uncertainty, and I'm not going to lie, I've missed having, I don't have a person like that at the moment in our business, and I've missed having that person. So I want to ask you, what has been the impact on you with not having Joyce in the business now? Have you found it a difficult transition? What's helped you through that transition? I'd be curious to...
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, when I think back of some of the great, passionate, high motivation days. So I kind of, where my mind goes is pre-COVID. And, I might come in from a meeting with a client and Joyce is in the office and, I'd share the details about the client and what we talked about and, excited about the opportunity and pretend, maybe we could do this, or what about if we, so we'd have this kind of conversation, which was fantastic, really, really good for me. I didn't realize maybe that I needed it. And I didn't realize that was what we had become, if you know what I mean. And the same for Joyce in return, I'm sure. But just, that's where my mind goes to when I remember those days and how great it was having a business partner who was trying to achieve the same thing that I was trying to achieve. And that's the one thing, I guess, for to come back to one of your earlier questions, when we set up Voltedge in the beginning, I think we were really clear about what we wanted. We brought our different skills to the table, but we kept each other honest, I think, because of our differences and how we were able to complement each other. We knew sometimes to pull back. We knew sometimes to, push forward. But that came fundamentally because we had huge personal respect for each other. We had professional respect for each other as well. And so I think we were really blessed and really fortunate to have built the business and experienced all of that. But then COVID came, all right? So COVID shifted us all into obviously a remote environment. Now we had remote workers, so some of our staff were working remotely before COVID. We had the hybrid model where people didn't necessarily come to the office every week. And we were very comfortable with that. We had set ourselves up for that. But one of the things that we introduced at that time when we all had to go back to base and work from home, the scars are deep, but, the homeschooling, oh, goodness me. But anyway, definitely not where my skill set is. We set up a morning call. So every morning the team would join a call at 9:30. And on Mondays, that call was almost like a social call. Okay. So yes, it was about talking about the week ahead and where, what are pressure points people have ahead of them? What are the tricky projects? Where might they need resource or support? But it actually was a social call. So we might talk about crazy things we saw or whatever. And we actually are still doing that morning call. Now it has evolved and we have reshaped it a bit. But we recognize that as a diverse and hybrid team, the value we get from having a time of the day where all of us can actually hop in to join each other. Yeah. So you don't have to join. You by all means can, if you need to schedule a call with a client or if you're head down in trying to get something finished, by all means do that. So, so Monday and Fridays are good because Friday helps you kind of close off the week a little bit. And Wednesday has become our knowledge sharing session in the morning. So we take Wednesdays as an opportunity for some learning. So somebody champions something in particular.
Yes.
And that might be something that came up for them on a project they were working on, or it could be a new process. It could be a new piece of legislation, something that someone will take the position of briefing the rest of the team on. And so that becomes kind of a really interesting day to join. You know what I mean? If you can't join some of the other days, definitely try and join for those. But so I think, your question around when you've been a partnership and a 50-50 relationship with your co-founder and their journey, their next chapter is going in a different direction. Obviously, on a personal and professional level, really miss Joyce, and I know the team will miss her. And, she has brought so much to the business. We built it together. There's so much fantastic things, some wonderful memories, but it is still alive. So her role in what she has helped shape and create is very much there. And I think obviously, this decision for her was not something that was taken lightly. It was something that we planned. We surrounded ourselves with really good advisors. So I think that's the other piece that's really important, because sometimes there can be too much navel gazing, and sometimes you can only see the view from your perspective. And of course, we know that there's lots of different perspectives to take consideration of. So I think surrounding yourself with really good advisors is really healthy, and it enables everybody, I think, then to make the right decisions for them. So that's I think so. The experience of COVID and how we worked, and then coming to this stage of this being the natural chapter for Joyce that she wanted to take.
I like though how you're describing it as well, as in you're not talking about it purely just from a professional perspective. Like, the business is still there, it's thriving, it's going to continue to move forward. Absolutely. Which is great and really important, because naturally, yes, there's more impact when it's a co-founder, but naturally people will leave businesses. But that sometimes there's a danger that the people who are left, all of a sudden, they feel like, well, yeah, that person's gone, but we're still here. We're still here driving this forward. And I think the balancing act, in order to, especially in this case, to say, it was great and thank you for everything and you will be missed, but then jumping back into, but hold on, we still have clients to serve.
And we go from here.
So I think you've actually described that really well. I think that it's not that you're emotionless in regard to it, but you're actually saying, yes, I will miss this person who was in this business for so long, but also this business is still here and we're still moving forward. And
I think we were really clear from the beginning, the business was not just going to be about us. Fredericka and Joyce are not in the job, are not in the company title. It was very much, we're building a business. And we just so happen to be the founders. So we just so happen to be the person leading the business right now. But this is more than just us. It's much more than just us. We have over 30 people on our team, all contributing in different ways. And we're hiring at the moment. And we've taken in some additional associates this year. So, the journey continues. And if it was me who was stepping away for whatever reason, I wouldn't want it any different either, So it's the essence of what drove you to start the company to start with, staying true to that and actually realizing that on the journey of discovery, because obviously, what we might have set out to achieve, it has evolved and it has grown and it has become a successful consultancy practice. And that's wonderful, but it is certainly not dependent on me, Joyce, or any other individual.
That's a really great position to be in. That's what an achievement from the two of you to have gotten this far with the business.
And so it should be,
Fredericka Sheppard, you've been a fantastic guest. I have one final question for you. And I always say with this question, no backstory needed, right? It is literally in a succinct one sentence. What is one lesson that you have learned across your years as a business owner that you would like to leave our listeners with?
I'd say one of the biggest things is respond, don't react. And in doing that, I think you need to have all your senses switched on. Listen, observe, reflect, and then navigate.
Fredericka Sheppard, thank you very much.
You're so welcome, Mark. Thank you so much.